Okay, now that we know a little bit about state machines, we're going to try to put all of our knowledge to work. And what we're going to do is look at an example that is fairly common that deals with streaming input. So, streaming input, what we're looking at is, for example, we'll have input X. And what we're going to look for is based off of input X for a set pattern, we're going to produce an output. So we're going to produce output Y, Z, let's say Z. Okay, so what does this kind of mean? Let's kind of get an idea of what we mean by saying we have a streaming input. All right, so let's say we had a conveyor belt. And on this conveyor belt, somewhere along the line, there's a camera. And this camera is looking at everything that passes right underneath it, which for us passing right underneath it would be this little square right here. And let's say on this square, we are looking to detect some set of items. So let's say over here at the end, we have something that's going to wrap X items together. Okay, what are these items? Right now, let's stay with binary. So let's say I have red items and I have green items. And this item, what we're going to say is going to group items together. Let's say we are looking for the pattern. We're going to be looking for the pattern of, let's say, red, green, and red. Now, in these items right here, the order we're looking for is red is first, green is second, red is third. Okay, so if we look at what's on the conveyor belt, we're going to see our first, our second, and our third. So this item here, this wrapping for right now, let's just say this wrapping, that is our output Z. And all we need to know is this Z, we just need to be able to tell it 0 is do nothing, and a 1 is, okay, wrap it. Okay, so that's going to be our output. And you know what? I don't like the term wrap. Let's take that out. It might be a little confusing at the end. So let's say we're going to trigger a warning. Something wrong has happened. Do nothing or give warning. Okay, these are going to be our two examples here. All right, so we can see that this is going to happen, and it's only in this camera where something's going to occur. So what has to happen is this belt is going to move. And when are we going to trigger the warning? We're going to trigger the warning when we get to the third item. So the red would have passed, the green would have passed. This red would now be underneath the camera. It is when this red comes underneath the camera, this is where we say Z is equal to 1. That's the trigger of the warning. All the other stuff just keeps moving down the line. New stuff will come up. Okay, so this is what we're trying to find. Okay, so let's do this and let's create this. Our pattern of red, green, red. Let's give this that red is a 1, green's a 0, red's a 1. So our X input, we have 1 is red, a 0 is green. And a Z is 0 is nothing, and a 1 is a warning has occurred. Okay, so now let's put this together. What we need to do is from the statement, we're going to need to create the finite state machine. Okay, so first thing we can do is think about this example right here. This example where the yellow item is at the top. Nothing has happened yet. So let's say that's our starting spot. Our starting spot is no input. Okay, so we're going to say at that point, z is equal to 0. And let's give this a letter A. And we're going to say A means no input. And it also means no item in the sequence, no item in pattern. Because remember, we're trying to find the pattern of 1, 0, 1. Okay, so let's work through finding our pattern. So to find our pattern, we start off with no items in a pattern. A red item passes through our camera, and that moves us to B. Still no warning. Okay, so now we're going to define what B needs to be. B is going to be, we have the first in the sequence. Okay, so the first in the sequence means I got a 1, blank, blank. I'm still waiting for the next 2 items. All right, let's continue on. I need a green item, or this X is 0. That gives me the C. Still no warning pops. And now I'm going to say C is the second in the sequence. That's a 1, 0, and a blank. Now let's finish this last item. Finishing the last item, I need a red item. So that's a red. And then that would give me the D. Here, yes, I have that warning. D is full sequence. The full sequence is 1, 0, 1. And there I should pop up a warning. Okay, so when you start making these state machines, the first thing you want to do is run through all the desired input to get your desired output. Our desired output was a 1 on Z. How did that have to happen? Had to be a red, a green, and a red. A 1, 0, and a 1. Okay, so let's see what would happen. In order to finish up this state machine, we need to find that every state has an input for X is 0 and X is 1. Right now, we don't have every circle on here having 2 arrows. That is going to be key that we will need to do. So let's just do a little bit of work on A. A is, let me change the color here. So A, we're saying no input, no sequence. Okay, so what does that kind of look like? Well, for us, it kind of looks like the camera sees nothing. And if it sees nothing, we should stay there. I'm not able to process going down to B yet. Or it's going to be that camera sees what's underneath it. It sees a green item, a 0. Well, the 0, the green, doesn't lead us into our sequence. You know, our sequence here was red, green, red. So we're a little bit off. So at here on this 0, it should be that I should stay in A, because A means I have not found the first red item. Okay, now let's go down to B. B is the first in sequence. It's a 1 blank blank. So what does that mean? So right now we can say our camera has 2 possibilities. One possibility is let's look at it at the next movement. So we had a red item. From there, we have 2 options. The first option is I have a red, and then I have a green. And we know that this entire item is state C. Or the other option is I have a red and a red. Well, this red and red, we know that C is red, green. And at that point, that's not possible for us to do. There's nothing in our sequence saying I need to find red, red. You see that? It's red, green, red. So I'm not moving on. But if we look at this, I know that this last one was not useful anymore. But here I'm under a red. In B, I was under a red, which means I should stay there. Because red means I found that first item in the sequence. So if I'm in B and I get another 1, I'm still first in the sequence. All right, so let's look at C now. C says we have second in sequence. It's a 1, 0, blank. So again, we'll have two options. First option is we know we have a red, a green, and a red. And what did this do? This was all of state D, the warning that we needed to give out. The other option is I have that camera. I have red, green, green. And at this point, red, green, green is not the sequence. This red, this green, telling me nothing ever could happen. Well, what does this look like here? This camera on top of a green with nothing in front of it. Well, look, that's the same as this one right here, the one in A. So that means from C, if I get a 0, I should be moving back to A. Okay, D needs 2 arrows. Right now, D doesn't have any arrows. All right, so let's look at D. D is full sequence of 1, 0, 1. So again, we'll have 2 options. So already I have a red, a green, and a red. And then I have this camera that's going to focus on something. I have a camera, and again, I have red, green, red. And it's going to focus on something. So I have 2 options. I have an option of green, and I have an option of a red. Okay, our sequence is red, green, red. And we kind of, look at this in a little bit of a backwards order here. We said, okay, this is first, second, and the third. As the camera moved through, that's the way we were seeing them. Well, right now we can see, okay, here it is, a red, a green, and a red. And if we look a little bit more in depth, we will also see that, let's see if this blue shows up. I have a red and a green here. Well, this red and green is C. C says I had a red. C says I had a green. So those two are going to match. So that means D, when it gets a 0, should be moving back to C. Now let's look at this last example. What happens when I get a 1? Well, when I get a 1, look at this. It was a red after a red. Did we see that someplace? Yes, we did. Where did we see it? We saw it in B. So B is just an item under the red. It's the first in our sequence. So if we get a 1, we should be moving back to B. All right, this is part 1. Part 1 is we're just finding out the state graph. We're going to move on to a part 2 in the next video that's going to show us writing out the table and then solving it.